Almost every one of the founders of Silicon Valley was impacted by Ayn Rand. You go back to the original venture capitalists, at least two of the founders of Sequoia Capital, the biggest venture capital fund, most successful maybe in history. Two of them, huge Ayn Rand fan. And my guess is many, many more within the venture community. If you go through the big founders, Wozniak says that Steve Jobs was heavily influenced by Atlas Shrugged, Michael Dell, Larry Ellison, Sam McNeely, Sun Microsystems, almost everything. And Andreessen, almost every single one of them have read Atlas Shrugged. The founder of Uber was a big Fountainhead fan. So she had a huge impact on the entrepreneurial culture in this country and in motivating. I mean, again, they don't agree with her ideas necessarily, but she provided them with that self-help, go for it, don't settle, stick to principle, fight for your values kind of attitude. I think she injected it or helped preserve it in the culture. And then if you look at, S&P 500 companies, certainly 20, 30 years ago, a dominant number of CEOs had that view. I think that a lot of the self-help movements over the last 40 years has been inspired by self-esteem, for example. Self-esteem is a concept she was talking about in the 50s. There was no self-esteem movement in the 50s. Now, they perverted the concept of self-esteem. It's gone in directions that I think she wouldn't support. But again, introducing the idea of self-esteem, esteeming yourself, that's a revolutionary idea, and she brought it into the culture. And I'd even say the attitude towards capitalism. I don't know that we would have had a Reagan and Thatcher revolution without people like Rand. Certainly Milton Friedman and von Mises and Hayek also contributed to that. But without Rand and Atlas Shrugged providing kind of a heroic moral perspective on the value and benefits of capitalism, I'm not sure you would have had those political revolutions. One of the sad things is that those revolutions have dissipated and are gone, and nobody represents them anywhere in the political world today. But it's her work as being a part of the culture and influenced that part of the culture in spite of the frowning and the dismissal of the intellectual class.
So would you take us for somebody that's looking into objectivism? I think a lot of this starts at the individual level, at the individualism aspect, where it's almost people a little older than me and a little younger than me. I think it's just kind of gone without saying that there's a collectivist nature in how we're taught things. I know that it's influenced, education that I've seen at a young age. And it was something that 20, 30 years before me wasn't just assumed that it was a collectivist framework that we kind of lived out of. So could you talk a little bit about what the emphasis is on the individual from her philosophy and why that's important and, kind of what transpires out of that?
Yeah, I mean, what's unique about her philosophy, and unique historically, so unique for hundreds of years, not just unique in the last few years, is that she's a moral individualist. She believes that the purpose of your life, your moral purpose, your ethical purpose, is your own success, your own flourishing, your own flourishing as a human being, your own ability to live your life to the maximum, to live the best life you can possibly live as given your nature as a human being. And that is really your moral responsibility. That's what morality is about, to teach you how to live a good life. Now, nobody teaches that, right? Almost every other philosophy tells you morality, the purpose of morality is, to not lie to your neighbor and to sacrifice for the common good and to know your place in society and to morality in every other context is a way of putting you down as an individual and placing something else above you, something more important to you, whether it's the class or the race or the state or the proletarian or whatever. Something is God, something is more important than you are. And morality is putting you in your place. And she's saying, no, morality, and here she echoes Aristotle, morality is a tool. It should teach you how to live well, how on principle you should guide your life in pursuit of your own happiness. And that's a massive revolution. And her answer to how to do that is also, in a sense, revolutionary, because there might be people out there, yeah, I want to find fulfillment in my life, so I'm gonna take some acid, or I'm gonna go and sleep around with anybody who'll sleep with me, or whatever, kind of an emotionalist attitude, which you see a lot kind of on the left, or I'm going to follow commandments. I want to be happy, so I'm going to do what somebody else decides is good for me, and I'll follow them. And she says, no, to really achieve happiness, to really live the best life you can, you have to live in accordance with your nature as a human being. And your nature as a human being is as a rational animal. So to live a good life, you have to follow reason. You have to follow your mind. You have to think. You could boil her entire morality down to think, right? Figure it out, solve problems, use your mind. She doesn't reject or denounce emotions. She just says emotions are not tools of cognition. They're not ways of knowing the world, and they're not ways of making decisions about the world. Decisions should be made by the use of reason, by the use of your mind. And she says, echoing the Enlightenment in some respect, but even more forcefully, reason is the way we know the world. Reason is the only way in which we know the world, and that's the one faculty that you have that you must cultivate, and you must make part of who you are, and make as the primary guide to how you live your life.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I think for me, at least, part of the abrasiveness I think that people have with her is they read titles like The Virtue of Selfishness, or they hear taglines that altruism isn't a virtue. Could you talk to that a little bit? Because I know that there's been, I heard you speaking with, I think it was Ben Shapiro, or there was a clip of a back and forth where, is it just words? Is it just verbiage that we're mixing up when we're talking about altruism? But I think it's a little different, because the picture you described to me kind of reminds me of, the mother on the plane that gives herself oxygen first before she gives it to her child. So you build yourself up before you can kind of do that for others. But can you talk a little bit about that concept of altruism and how she views it differently than the way we typically?
I mean, I don't like the way the oxygen mask thing, because the way you present the oxygen mask thing is the purpose is to help your neighbor. And in order to help your neighbor, you have to first put on your oxygen in yourself so you can help the neighbor. And I'm tempted to say, to hell with my neighbor. I don't believe that, but I'm tempted to say it, because the purpose of putting on the oxygen mask is for me to survive. Now, put aside if it's my child. My child is part of me, right? But I'm not helping the stranger until I put my mask on, not because I need to help the stranger. It's because I need to survive. That's the primary thing I need to do. And then once I'm surviving, why not be benevolent towards your stranger and help him put on the mask and help him survive as well? But the purpose is you. And so I don't want to soften it. Altruism is a philosophical concept. Rand viewed as evil. It's fundamentally, essentially evil, because the concept of altruism comes from a philosopher by the name of Auguste Comte in the 19th century. He's a Frenchman. But look, it's the same concept that's in Christianity. It's the same concept that's in Kant. It's the same concept that's in much of the philosophy of the West. The concept of altruism says that the moral purpose of your life is to serve other people. It's to live for other people. And indeed, to be virtuous, to be good, is to sacrifice to other people. What does sacrifice mean in this context? Not the way Jordan Peterson kind of tries to explain it in a shallow, ridiculous way, which is, I'm doing something now to gain greater benefit in the future. That's not a sacrifice. You know exactly what that is from real estate. It's called an investment. That's not a sacrifice. When you make an investment in a property and you're giving up money now with expectation of a cash flow in the future, you would never call that a sacrifice. That's an investment. Yeah. What a sacrifice is a loss. You're giving something up without expecting anything in return. Mm-hmm. Not an investment. It's a sacrifice. So altruism requires you to sacrifice. It requires you to lose. And what are you losing in? You're losing in the game of life. You're losing life. And Rand says, why? Why should you live for other people? It doesn't mean you should be nasty to other people. It doesn't mean you shouldn't help other people. But why should I live for other people? Why should I lose for other people? What Rand is promoting is the idea of win-win relationships, which we understand from business. We understand from markets. You should always look to gain in life.